Thank you for doing that. Hey, come on. What is this, a dream? Hare Krishna. Welcome home. Nice to see you both. Hare Krishna. Good to see you again. Will this be comfortable for you? If not, there's chairs also. You take the most comfortable. Okay. And you can also migrate. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Prachardine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatardine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Prachardine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatardine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Radhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. This is let me see those kartals for a second. It's kind of a different beat. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Gaur Premanande Nitai Gaura Haribol 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 Gaura Haribol. Nitai Gaura Haribol 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 Gaura Haribol. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai Gaur Premanande Haribol. Let's look at the Sri Upanishad. And we're going to read verse number, it's the invocation, it's on page number 13. And the verse says, Om Purnam Adak Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vishishyate. The translation. The personality of Godhead is perfect and complete, and because he is completely perfect, all emanations from him, such as this phenomenal world, are perfectly equipped as complete wholes. Whatever is produced of the complete whole is also complete in itself. Because he is the complete whole, even though so many complete units emanate from him, he remains the complete balance. Purport. The complete whole, or the supreme absolute truth, is the complete personality of Godhead. Realization of impersonal Brahman, or of Paramatma, the Supersoul, is incomplete realization of the Absolute Complete. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is Sakchit Ananda Vigraha. Realization of impersonal Brahman is realization of his Sat feature, or his aspect of eternity. And Paramatma realization is realization of his Sat and Chit features, his aspects of eternity and knowledge. But realization of the personality of Godhead is realization of all the transcendental features, Sat, Chit, and Ananda, bliss. When one realizes the Supreme Person, he realizes these aspects of the Absolute Truth in their completeness. Vigraha means form. Thus the complete whole is not formless. If he were formless, or if he were less than his creation in any other way, he could not be complete. The complete whole must contain everything both within and beyond our experience. Otherwise, he cannot be complete. The complete whole, the personality of Godhead, has immense potencies, all of which are as complete as he is. Thus this phenomenal world is also complete in itself. The 24 elements of which this material universe is a temporary manifestation are arranged to produce everything necessary for the maintenance and subsistence of this universe. No other unit in the universe need make any extraneous effort to try to maintain the universe. The universe functions on its own time scale, which is fixed by the energy of the complete whole. And when that schedule is completed, this temporary manifestation will be annihilated by the complete arrangement of the complete whole. All facilities are given to the small complete units, namely the living beings, to enable them to realize the complete whole. All forms of incompleteness are experienced due to incomplete knowledge of the complete whole. The human form of life is a complete manifestation of the consciousness of the living being, and it is obtained after evolving through 8,400,000 species of life in the cycle of birth and death. If in this human life of full consciousness the living entity does not realize his completeness in relation to the complete whole, he loses the chance to realize his completeness and is again put into the evolutionary cycle by the law of material nature. Because we do not know that there is a complete arrangement in nature for our maintenance, we make efforts to utilize the resources of nature to create a so-called complete life of sense enjoyment. Because the living entity cannot enjoy the life of the senses without being dovetailed with the complete whole, the misleading life of sense enjoyment is illusion. The hand of a body is complete unit. The hand of a body is a complete unit only as long as it is attached to the complete body. When the hand is severed from the body, it may appear like a hand, but it actually has none of the potencies of a hand. Similarly, living beings are part and parcel of the complete whole. And if they are severed from the complete whole, the illusory representation of completeness cannot fully satisfy them. The completeness of human life can be realized only when one engages in the service of the complete whole. All services in this world, whether social, political, communal, international, or even interplanetary, will remain incomplete until they are dovetailed with the complete whole. When everything is dovetailed with the complete whole, the attached parts and parcels also become complete in themselves. So herein is the solution to all problems. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhoktaram Jagyatapasam Sarvalokamaheshwaram Suridam Sarvabhutanam Gyatva Mam Shantim Richyati. This Gyatva Mam Shantim Richyati means that one who has knowledge of three things becomes peaceful. Those three things are that Krishna is the enjoyer of everything, that he's the proprietor of everything, and that he's the friend of everyone. And the opposite, well, what's true for Krishna isn't true for me. I'm not the enjoyer, and I'm also, I'm not the proprietor of anything, and I'm also not the friend of every living being. And when I try to be, when I try to be the controller of everything and the friend of all living beings, I fall short, and there's frustration. So I'm the servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the complete whole. And in that position, I feel complete. Just like a small part of a machine, when it's in the machine, it has its function and is very valuable. But as soon as it's separated, the little screw, you take it out and the machine doesn't work, then and when the part is separated, it just becomes an insignificant part. But when it's part of the machine, it plays an important role. So, Bhoktaram Jagatapasam. So Krishna is the enjoyer. And this means, like with the body, there's a stomach. And when the hands and all the other senses cooperate to feed the stomach, then naturally the hands become nourished. But if they try to enjoy independently, they'll be dissatisfied and they won't be nourished. So in Krishna consciousness, a person, a devotee, realizes that by satisfying Krishna's senses, my senses become satisfied. When I try to independently satisfy my senses, I become frustrated and I become entangled. And similarly, when I try to own something in this world, it's also troublesome. First of all, how long can I own it for? And as long as I'm attached, then whatever I'm trying to own or control becomes troublesome for me. It doesn't mean that I don't have any possessions or I just walk around with no clothes, although some have done that, like Shukadev Goswami. But it does mean that I give up my sense of proprietorship over whatever possessions I have, and I accept only what's necessary and not more than that. In that situation, there's no burden. However, when I try to control or own something, then there's a great burden. And similarly, I can't successfully be the friend of all living entities. For instance, if I want to stop hunger in the world, how far can I go? Maybe I can feed a few people, but they'll be hungry the next day anyway. But Krishna is feeding everybody everywhere. Nityo nityanam chaitanas chaitananam eko bahunam yo vididhati kamam. The Vedas say that the Supreme Absolute Truth is the feeder and the living entities are the fed. That means that everywhere, everyone's being maintained by Krishna. Sarvasya dataram, Krishna says, is one of the ways to meditate on him. In the Bhagavad Gita, he gives various aspects of his personality that we can meditate on. And one of them is Sarvasya dataram. It means that he's the maintainer of everything. and of everyone. But I can't claim that. I can't even maintain myself. I'm being maintained. So this is reality, understanding that I don't own, and I'm not the friend, and I'm also not the enjoyer, is reality. And if I engage my senses in serving Krishna, who is the controller and who does own everything, and I rightly place all of my possessions in his service, then I'm naturally situated and I enjoy life at every step. So in conditioned life, I have this idea that I'm the owner, the controller, the enjoyer, and therefore I must become purified. And this is the life of yajna, performing sacrifice for the sake of the Supreme. And gradually by that sacrifice, by that yajna, my senses become purified. And I realize my identity as an eternal servant of Krishna. And this is the perfection of life. So this verse describes the Supreme Absolute Truth as the complete whole. Everything is being maintained by him and is going on in perfect balance because of his energies that are expanded everywhere. And we can see the hand of the maintainer, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, within everything. Wherever we go, we can see how things are perfectly created. Like within a tree, there are fruits, and within the fruits there are seeds, and those seeds then can produce another tree. And the universe itself is set up as a complete unit with everything that's necessary for maintenance and maintaining all the living entities that are within the universe. So there really is no problem except for my misplaced energy and misunderstanding about who's the controller and the enjoyer. But once I adjust that, then I can experience the true happiness in life. Gyatva mam shantim richiti. Actually, Krishna says somebody who understands this and is properly aligned and oriented is shanti, is peaceful, is happy. Hare Krishna. So now, questions. Questions are like a hook. Once you ask them, then the person is obligated to respond. So you can obligate me by asking a question. Yes. Here's a microphone for you.
You have just mentioned that that Krishna maintains everything and he will feed us if we please him. So, but it's very easy.
Not necessarily if you please him, he's feeding us anyway, even if we don't please him. Go ahead.
Pardon? I didn't understand.
Well, he's feeding everyone. Even when we don't please him, he's still providing.
Okay, but it's very easy. Does it mean that you just have to sit and pray and do nothing?
No.
So where is the line between reasonable actions and irrational actions?
Well, Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita how there's three kinds of action, which he calls karma, akarma, and vikarma. So karma means work that's according to the Vedas, which is meant for elevation, for material happiness. And vikarma means work that is against the laws of the universe, which causes severe reaction. And akarma means work that doesn't cause any reaction at all. So Krishna explains that no one's expected to stop working because we can't. Naturally, everyone is active. It's the nature of the living force to be active. Even when you go to sleep at night, you're active. You lie down and your body goes into a dream state, but even in the dream state, you're active. And when you wake up, you're active again. So constantly, we're acting. So we can't stop acting, and Krishna never recommends that we just stop all action. But he does recommend that we give up a sense of proprietorship over our work. In other words, if I produce something, I don't claim that it's mine. I place the result of that work in the hands of Krishna. And because I don't have a sense of proprietorship over my work and over the fruits of my work, and I'm not attached to it, there's no reaction to it. And it also doesn't mean that you don't have any possessions. You may have possessions, but it's just like a bank teller, has money, but he or she doesn't think that this is my money. As soon as he or she thinks this is my money, there's problems. That bank teller will start feeling some anxiety, start perspiring, counting the money, thinking, well, maybe this could be mine, and maybe he'll take one. And then there's problems. There's problems. But a bank teller who just does his or her duty and counts the money doesn't have any problem. It's not his money to worry about. So all of the things that we have and the duties that we have, that we've been given according to our nature in this world, are meant to satisfy the Supreme. So if we do our work in a detached way and offer the fruit to Krishna, then there's no reaction to that work. So also, this is called Yukta Vairagya. Yukta means to connect things to the Supreme, to our Supreme Source, Krishna. And Vairagya means renunciation. So it means that it doesn't mean that you don't have things, but it means the things that you do have, you connect them in service so that they're useful in the service of the Supreme. Then you're renounced, even though you have many things. And you perform duties, you do your work, but you're not getting a reaction for that work. Would you like to ask a follow-up question?
No.
Did that answer your question? Okay. Another question. Manish. Good to see you, by the way. Hare Krishna.
Today we had some Gita discussion on our company. So one of the devotee asked, like Prabhupada mentioned so many times that there is a pure devotee and we should try to associate. So whom we can define as a pure devotee?
What is the definition of a pure devotee?
Yeah. Or how we can recognize him, like he's a pure devotee.
How can you recognize what's a pure devotee?
Yeah.
Pure devotee is defined variously, but a pure devotee is defined as one who's strictly following another pure devotee. So someone who's following a pure devotee is also pure because such a person is rightly situated. And purity has to do with the intention. In other words, someone who's there are people performing various actions, but someone who's dedicating their work and their mind, and everything to Krishna, that's their intention to serve Krishna is considered a pure devotee. There are definitions of various classes of devotees given in the Shastra. And there are the beginning devotees, the middle devotees, and the most advanced devotees. These are called in Sanskrit the Kanishta Adhikari, the Madhyama Adhikari, and the Uttama Adhikari. And within those categories, there are subcategories. For instance, there may be a Kanishta Kanishta, and a Madhyam Kanishta, and an Uttam Kanishta, and a Madhyam Kanishta, and a Madhyam Madhyam, and an Uttam Madhyam, etc., and many other categories. In other words, there are various stages of advancement. However, you'll find in the Nectar of Instruction in the 5th verse that the definition of the various advanced stages, the 3 advanced stages, are that the Kanishta Adhikari is the beginner who has what's called Komal Shraddha. It means his or her faith is very tender. That devotee can be dissuaded by somebody else who brings a strong argument and says, well, there is no God, what are you doing? That person also doesn't know much about Shastra. And the Madhyam, the middle devotee, has strong faith. However, he or she doesn't know Shastra very well and can't argue based on Scripture. And the Uttamadhikari is described as one who has strong faith and also has who is expert in Shastra. Shastra Nipuna. Nipuna means a kind of an expert. Knows how everything connects in Shastra. Knows how to present Shastra in logic to argue various points. This is one of the definitions. These are definitions given. Also in the Srimad Bhagavatam, definitions of three levels of devotees. The Kanishta-adhikari is described as one who particularly is attached only to worshipping in the church or the temple. Sees that God's in the church or the temple or the mosque, but doesn't see that God's everywhere else. Doesn't also recognize the devotees of God. Just sees there's the church, that's where God is. But doesn't know how to treat other living entities. Also doesn't know how to show respect to devotees of God. This is the definition of the Kanishta-adhikari. And then the Madhyama-adhikari is described as one who recognizes the Supreme, Ishvar, recognizes the devotees, recognizes the innocent, and recognizes the envious, those who are against the whole idea of there being a God. So Madhyama-adhikari sees four entities and acts differently to each one of them. Towards Krishna, he gives his love. To all the devotees, he makes appropriate friendships. Towards the innocent, he pours in as much mercy as possible. And towards the envious, he's indifferent. He doesn't deal with them. It's not the duty of a Madhyama-adhikari to interact with those who are envious. He's upeksha, indifferent, so he goes around them, doesn't deal with them. And the Uttamadhikari, sarva bhuteshu ya pashyad bhagavad bhavamatmanaha bhutani bhagavadyatmani esha bhagavatottama. The Bhagavat Uttam, the highest grade devotee, sees Krishna everywhere. Sarva bhuteshu ya pashyad. Everywhere he looks, and in all living entities, he sees the existence of Krishna. Described that on one level, a devotee sees the energies of Krishna and then thinks of Krishna because of that. Just like a parent who comes home and sees his daughter's little shoes on the porch and immediately thinks, oh, that's my daughter, because he sees the shoes. So a pure devotee of the Lord will see a tree and see the fruit and think, oh, Krishna's there because he's doing all this. He's the source of all this energy. So he's always connecting everything. And in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the discussion between Ramananda Roy and Lord Chaitanya, it's also described how an Uttamadhikari, another level, will actually see the form of Shyamasundara everywhere and within his heart also. Premanjana chudita bhakti vilochinena santak sadaiva hridayeshu vilokayanti yam Shyamasundara achintya guna swarupam govindam adipurusham tamaham bhajami. That one who has developed prema, or love for Krishna, is always seeing Shyamasundara within his heart. Actually seeing the form of the Lord, of his beloved. Yes?
How does a Uttamadhikari deal with an envious person? My question is, how would an Uttamadhikari deal with an envious person or persons?
The Uttamadhikari, if the Uttamadhikari is interacting with the material world as a preacher, then he comes down to the level of the Madhyama-adhikari, and he observes these four divisions. So he would do the same, and he would avoid. But an Uttama Adhikari generally sees everyone. He doesn't preach. That's why he has to come down to the Madhyama Adhikari platform, because he sees everyone engaged already in Krishna's service. In other words, even though conditioned souls are serving the material energy, Vishnu Maya, because he's seeing Krishna within everything and Krishna everywhere, he just sees that they're perfectly situated. He has no reason to preach to them, or to do anything, so he doesn't preach. So with an envious person, he's undeterred. There are examples of Rishabhadeva, who became an avadut, and people would throw things at him, and he was just indifferent. It didn't affect him one way or the other. In the story of Jad Bharat, who was an Uttama Adhikari, he was berated by the king when he carried his palanquin, and he didn't take offense, but eventually he came down and preached to the king and said, because the king was saying that, what's wrong with you? Are you too weak to carry the palanquin? And soon Jad Bharat preached to the king and said that, I'm neither weak nor strong, and I'm not my body. And the king began to realize that this is an advanced devotee who's not in the bodily conception of life. Depends on the situation. Yes, Ramananda Sakha.
I have one question. You mentioned 3 types of work. One is karma, second one is akarma, third one is vikarma. Karma means the work according to the rules and regulations of the scriptures. Fruitive work according to the rules and regulations of the Vedas or the scriptures. And the kind of works we engage in the present age. Sometimes that work is referred to as Ugra Karma by Prabhupada. I heard him saying Ugra Karma. It means it's work that is ordinarily needed, but everyone is pushing for that work to get done. Under what category this kind of work that we currently do? Like for example, someone is trying hard to build a skyscraper, which is not really needed. So under what category this thing comes? Karma?
Ugra karma.
Okay, so that's a separate category by itself.
Well, it's no, it's not a separate category. It's generally vikarma, because if you're working for some kind of an endeavor that's sinful, then there's sinful reaction involved. However, Krishna describes in the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita that every endeavor has some kind of fault. Just as fire has smoke, so similarly, everyone in every division of work in the material world has some faulty action attached to it. So it depends also on how you treat that work. In other words, you're working, and if you're maintaining yourself and also giving some of the fruit of that work to Krishna, then you're dovetailing it, and you're not becoming entangled. Because work done, whatever work that you have to do, that you're obligated to do, when it's connected to Krishna by giving up the fruit, then becomes connected and non-reactive. So it can become a karma. All right? Okay. Yes.
Like while practicing devotional service, I found like certain times like we become so much mechanical. Like even while like bowing down to Vaishnava, just it become Hari Bol, just like there is no feeling coming out of mouth or from heart. It is just become mechanical. Or even like offering prayers like Om Ajnana Timirandhasa, just it ends and Hare Krishna, and like in between where it is we don't know. So how to overcome of this mechanical tendency inside us?
Well, if you recite prayers regularly, you should study them. Krishna told Uddhava in the Srimad Bhagavatam that the way you purify a mantra is by studying it. And you'll find when you study mantras very carefully, you look at them, then when you say them, they'll have lots of meaning for you, and you'll think about them. For instance, if you study the prayers, the Guru Vashtakam prayers, and you look at them very carefully, they're very beautiful. They're poetical, and they have a lot of meaning. And if you connect them to, to your actual circumstance in life, and you think about them, when you sing them, they'll be heartfelt. So you should take some time whenever you're doing something to think about what you're doing. For instance, bowing down. You mentioned bowing down. You can get into a situation where, as Prabhupada said, it's just a chopping method. One of his devotees was coming in, and after a while he started nonchalantly offering obeisance, and he just sort of bob his head down and move on. And Prabhupada said, what is this chopping method? But if you actually think about it when you offer obeisances, take time, it's actually one of the main processes of devotional service to offer obeisances. Krishna says, Manmana pavamad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. And it's very satisfying, actually, to put your head down. What is it? It's the only time your head is lower than your heart, right? And, if you think about what you're doing, there's a lot more benefit to it. So just be conscious when you do things. Come back, center yourself, and be conscious when you're doing them. And if you're aware that you're just doing it in a mechanical way, then stop doing that and be aware that it's, you have an opportunity to do it and think about what you're saying. It just brings some consciousness. As soon as you bring the consciousness to it, then you'll be able to appreciate it. Otherwise, it's called niyamagraha. There's niyamagraha. Niyamagraha means that you do things, you follow the rules and regulations only for the sake of following them. Niyamagraha. You're not even thinking about why you're doing it. And niyamagraha means that you give them up altogether. So you should follow the vidis, the rules of bhakti, but at the same time study them. Why are you doing them? And think about how you're doing them. And then they'll be relishable. And fortunately, because you're a human being, you can do that. You can change your course in life at any time and decide to do things a different way. This is a good time of year to do that, by the way. Sort of dark. Today's the shortest day of the year. You could feel it, right? Everyone's putting up lights just to tolerate. Can we get through this? As soon as the light starts going down, and starting a new cycle, heading towards summer. And this new year is coming up. So it's a good time of year to stop and look at what you're doing. I just was traveling and met with some of the other Sankirtan teams, like in Toronto and DC, who are doing very well. And we had, Sankirtan meetings there, and we'd start off by listing all the things that we'd accomplished during the year. And we'd brainstorm for, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, and see what have we accomplished, because oftentimes we're always looking to the next thing and the next thing, and we don't stop and think about, what do I have right now? What can I appreciate right at the moment? And then it's a good idea to also make some goals for the new year. Every day you can really dramatically change your day by just consciously writing down what you're going to do that day. Be surprised, because if someone asks you in the morning, what's your plan for the day? It's like, well, whatever I did yesterday, I'm just going to try to do the same thing. But you can do better than that. You can actually decide yourself, how am I going to make today better? It's painful because the mind wants to run off and not do that. But actually, this kind of thinking can change your life. And this relates to your devotional activity. Decide what that you're going to do it purposefully. What if you decided that you're going to speak truthfully in the new year, at least for 24 hours? And you start thinking about, how do I speak? How do I walk? What do I do? And make a decision, to make some changes. Then you'll become conscious of it. It works for me. I write these things down and I decide this is how I'm going to conduct myself today. These are my goals for the day. And then I become energized and I become more aware of what I'm doing also. I become aware of my time when I have a goal. If I don't have a goal of the things I want to accomplish for the day, then someone wants to waste my time. It's perfectly fine with me because I have nothing to do. But if you have somewhere to go and a schedule to keep on, and they're all connected, with awareness and designing your own life, which way you want to go. Purposeful praying and chanting. So stop yourself, get out of the routine. You're welcome. What else? Akaranath Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
I just wanted to introduce everyone. We have a new guest tonight, Keyur Patel.
Keyur Patel, Haribo.
His family are Vaishnavas following the Vallabhacharya Mahaprabhu sect and Pushti Marga sect, and he's involved in some different business activities here. We met through my professional connections. So everyone, I'm glad that he's welcome here. And
very much so. Hare Krishna. Welcome. Thanks for coming. Yeah. Charlene.
Hi.
Hi.
I also want to introduce Mo. He is my professional connection also.
Hey Mo, welcome. Hare Krishna. Is your first time here? Oh, thank you for coming. Hare Krishna. Yes. You may.
I didn't understand the difference between the innocent and the envious, because people can be envious because they're simply ignorant. So, otherwise, how to see the difference? They might not know, so they might be behaving envious. So in that way, they're innocent.
Okay, get the dictionary. Look up innocent first. I can tell the difference. No, when I'm looking around, for instance, when we go out to meet people to distribute books, I can tell from people's demeanor and from the way they react and the way they talk to me, who is innocent and who is envious. Well, look up innocent, look up envious, or look up envy or innocence. And we'll see if there's any difference. Satam prasangam mama viryasam. Krishna talks about devotees, and Lord Kapila Dev is an incarnation of Krishna. He talks about the satam. And this phrase, satam, person who is truthful. You found it? Okay, go ahead. Which word?
In fact, there are 6 meanings.
For which?
For innocent.
Okay.
The first is uncorrupted by evil, malice or wrongdoing. That means sinless. Example is an innocent child. 2 is not guilty of a specific crime, legally blameless. And 3, not dangerous or harmful or innocuous. And 4, not experienced or worldly or naive. And 5th is not exposed to or familiar with something special, something specified, unaware or ignorant. And 6th, betraying or suggesting no deception or guile, and are artless. So these are the 6 meanings.
Okay, now look up envy. Envious. The sense is that there's one of the offenses in chanting the holy names is to try to teach somebody about the absolute nature of the name when they're faithless, when they're not interested. this is an offense. So we have to judge when we're talking to people how open they are. This is kind of the sense of it, that if someone's saying things that are derogatory about the holy name and about Krishna and such, then it's not your duty to stay there and try to turn them around. You look for people who are open. So we call this the ripe fruit philosophy. When you go to pick fruits from a tree, you look for the fruits that are ripe first. And if a fruit's not ripe, it's not your business to make it ripe all of a sudden. It's just not ripe. Of course, if someone's in a situation where they are just temporarily a little bit confused, and the teacher is very strong and can convince somebody. Thank you very much for coming. Hare Krishna. Then it depends on the strength of the person who's preaching. But oftentimes you'll hear Prabhupada in some of the lectures when he was in an atmosphere where people just didn't want to hear. Sometimes there were revolutionary students in the audience, and they would begin shouting things. And, Prabhupada would say, just have kirtan, or he'd say, let's go. And then he would say, let's not go back there again to that particular place, because they weren't open. Okay, envy?
I found the meaning of envy. Envy has, again, three meanings. That is like a feeling of discontent and resentment aroused by those desirable positions or qualities, accompanied by a strong desire to have them for oneself. 2, one that is object of envy, the envy of all their friends or whatever. And 3 is malevolence.
Malevolence.
As opposed to benevolence.
Yeah. Yeah, so somebody objects to what you're doing and is forcefully against it, then don't do it. Generally look for people who are open. That's the idea. Did that answer your question? But if somebody has doubts, but they're willing to talk and listen, and it doesn't mean that a person has to be free from doubts in order for us to talk to them or preach to them. Because doubting is a sign of intelligence, Lord Kapila Dev says. And those doubts should progressively be removed by hearing from the authority. And gradually as they're removed, then one becomes fixed up. Siddhanta Bulya Chittana Kara Alash Iha Hoite Lage Krishna Sudrid Manash. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Kaviraj Goswami says that we shouldn't be lazy about discussing the philosophy from different angles, because by doing so, one's mind becomes fixed. So there may be some doubt, and to clarify that, this is not a sign of envy. Someone may be innocent and at the same time have doubts and express those doubts, but does so in a way that is not challenging. And if you approach a person who has knowledge and you're very challenging, then you won't get very far. I've seen it in school. Teachers just close right down. But if somebody's open and they actually want to learn, they can ask a lot of questions if they're submissive. And then the teacher will answer all those questions. May we please have the third canto, part 4? In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Devahuti, who is the mother of Lord Kapila Dev, asks her son, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, a question which many people can relate to. So I'm going to read you her questions and see if you can appreciate them. This is from the 3rd canto, 27th chapter, 17th verse. Sri Devahuti inquired, My dear Brahmana, she's speaking to Kapiladev, does material nature ever give release to the spirit soul? Since one is attracted to the other eternally, how is their separation possible? Purport. Devahuti, the mother of Kapiladev, here makes her first inquiry. Although one may understand that spirit, soul, and matter are different, their actual separation is not possible, either by philosophical speculation or by proper understanding. The spirit soul is the marginal potency of the Supreme Lord, and matter is the external potency of the Lord. The two eternal potencies have somehow or other been combined, and since it is so difficult to separate one from the other, how is it possible for the individual soul to become liberated? By practical experience, one can see that when the soul is separated from the body has no real existence. And when the body is separated from the soul, one cannot perceive the existence of the soul. As long as the soul and the body are combined, we can understand that there is life. But when they are separated, there is no manifested existence of the body or the soul. This question asked by Devahuti of Kapiladev is more or less impelled by the philosophy of voidism. The voidists say that consciousness is a product of a combination of matter, and that as soon as the consciousness is gone, the material combination dissolves, and therefore there is ultimately nothing but voidness. This absence of consciousness is called nirvana in Mayavad philosophy. Continuing her question, Devahuti says, as there is no separate existence of the earth and its aroma, or of water and its taste, there cannot be any separate existence of intelligence and consciousness. Purport. The example is given here that anything material has an aroma. The flower, the earth, everything has an aroma. If the aroma is separated from the matter cannot be identified. If there's no taste to water, the water has no meaning. If there's no heat in the fire has no meaning. Similarly, when there is want of intelligence, spirit has no meaning. Text 19. Devahuti still. Hence, even though he is the passive performer of all activities, how can there be freedom for the soul as long as material nature acts on him and binds him? Rakshit, you're going to like this first part of the purport. I mean, I know you'll like the whole part, but this. Although the living entity desires freedom from the contamination of matter, he is not given release. Actually, as soon as a living entity puts himself under the control of the modes of material nature, his acts are influenced by the qualities of material nature, and he becomes passive. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Prakrite kriyamanani gunai. The living entity acts according to the qualities or modes of material nature. He falsely thinks that he is acting, but unfortunately he is passive. In other words, he has no opportunity to get out of the control of material nature because it has already conditioned him. In Bhagavad Gita, it is also stated that it is very difficult to get out of the clutches of material nature. Where does it say that? Daiva hi esha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya. It's very difficult. One may try in different ways to think that everything is void in the ultimate issue, that there is no God, and that even if the background of everything is spirit, is impersonal. This speculation may go on, but actually it is very difficult to get out of the clutches of material nature. Are you relating to this? Yeah. Devahuti poses the question that although one may speculate in many ways, where is liberation as long as one is under the spell of material nature? The answer is also found in the Bhagavad Gita 7:14. Only one who has surrendered himself unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord Krishna, Mameva ye prapadyante, can be freed from the clutches of Maya. Since Devahuti is gradually coming to the point of surrender, her questions are very intelligent. How can one be liberated? How can one be in a pure state of spiritual existence as long as he is strongly held by the modes of material nature? This is also an indication to the false meditator. There are many so-called meditators who think, I am the Supreme Spirit Soul. I am conducting the activities of material nature. Under my direction the sun is moving and the moon is rising. They think that by such contemplation or meditation they can become free, but it is seen that just 3 minutes after finishing such nonsensical meditation, they are immediately captured by the modes of material nature. Immediately after his high-sounding meditation, a meditator, quote unquote, becomes thirsty and wants to smoke or drink. He is under the strong grip of material nature, yet he thinks that he is already free from the clutches of Maya. This question of Devahuti's is for such a person who falsely claims that he is everything, and ultimately everything is void, and that there is no sinful or pious activities. These are all atheistic inventions. Actually, unless a living entity surrenders unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead as instructed in Bhagavad Gita, there is no liberation or freedom from the clutches of Maya. I saw in Toronto at the Dufferin Mall, where we had a chanting party outside the mall, and also a book table and book distribution going on. And I was going to the various spots, so when I drove up, the devotees were already chanting, and I noticed that in the chanting party, which consisted of about 4 devotees in that particular spot, there was a young woman who had come along and was attracted to the chanting. I found out the whole story afterwards. She had first been attracted by the book table and the chanting. She didn't know what it was, so someone gave her a mantra card and explained to her how to chant the mantra. And so she had a cigarette in one hand and the mantra card in the other hand when I drove up. And she was enthusiastically, dancing, the cigarette here and the mantra card here, and very much absorbed in trying to get the mantra right. And I noticed the more animated she became, she finally threw the cigarette away. And I was thinking about this verse that Prabhupada was saying, by some kind of meditation, afterwards one smokes. But during the kind of mantra meditation, even if one's smoking, the cigarette goes flying away, because the senses naturally become satisfied and controlled by the mantra and by the chanting and dancing. I saw that before my eyes and realized that she didn't have a taste for smoking as soon as she got swept away by the mantra. Okay, after this next verse, we're going to hear the answer from Lord Kapiladev, and it'll help us to focus on how to get free from the strong clutches of material nature. This is Devahuti continuing her questions. Even if the great fear of bondage is avoided by mental speculation and inquiry into the fundamental principles, it may still appear again, since its cause has not ceased. Purport. Material bondage is caused by putting oneself under the control of matter because of the false ego of lording it over material nature. Bhagavad Gita 7.27 states, Icha dvesha sumutena. 2 kinds of propensities arise in the living entity. One propensity is icha, which means desire to lord it over material nature or to be as great as the Supreme Lord. Everyone desires to be the greatest personality in this material world. Dvesha means envy. When one becomes envious of Krishna or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one thinks, why should Krishna be the all-in-all? I'm as good as Krishna. These 2 items, desire to be the Lord and envy of the Lord, are the beginning cause of material bondage. As long as the philosopher, salvationist, or voidist has some desire to be supreme, to be everything, or to deny the existence of God, the cause remains, and there's no question of his liberation. Hare Krishna. Can all move up about 5 inches. Are you able to concentrate? Are you able to hear this so far? Yeah? Okay. So here's the last paragraph before we get to Kapiladev's answer. So listen very carefully. Hear this very attentively, and you'll find out why in the next verse also. Okay. Devahuti very intelligently says, one may theoretically analyze and say that by knowledge he has become freed, but actually, as long as the cause exists, he is not free. Bhagavad Gita confirms that after performing such speculative activities for many, many births, when one actually comes to his real consciousness and surrenders unto the Supreme Lord Krishna, then the fulfillment of his research and knowledge is actually achieved. There's a gulf of difference between theoretical freedom and actual freedom from material bondage. The Bhagavatam 10.14.4 says that if one gives up the auspicious path of devotional service and simply tries to know things by speculation, one wastes his valuable time. Klishyanti ye kevala bodha labdeye. The result of such labor of love is simply labor. There is no other result. The labor of speculation is ended only by exhaustion. The example is given that there is no benefit in husking the skin of an empty paddy. The rice is already gone. Similarly, simply by the speculative process one cannot be freed from material bondage, for the cause still exists. One has to nullify the cause, and then the effect will be nullified. This is explained by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the following verses. So these verses particularly caught my attention because the frequently asked question is, how do I actually become free from the influence of material nature? It seems impossible. That's a frequently asked question. And that's exactly what Devahuti is saying. It seems like I am my body. I mean, how do I'm so entwined and connected to the material nature and to the habits that are second nature. How do I become free from this situation? So now we have the great fortune of hearing directly from Kapiladev, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, of what is the definitive answer, how to achieve this liberation. Because as mentioned in the purports, that just by adjustment, by mental adjustment or by physical adjustment, we won't find a satisfactory repose in this world. We won't become happy, we won't become peaceful. So we have to achieve perfection in devotional service. And here's the answer by Lord Kapiladev. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, one can get liberation by seriously discharging devotional service unto me, and thereby hearing for a long time about me or from me. By thus executing one's prescribed duties, there will be no reaction, and one will be freed from the contamination of matter. Would you like to hear it again? The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, one can get liberation by seriously discharging devotional service unto me, and thereby hearing for a long time about me or from me. By thus executing one's prescribed duties, there will be no reaction, and one will be freed from the contamination of matter. Purport. Sridhar Swami comments in this connection that by association with material nature alone, one does not become conditioned. Conditional life begins only after one is infected by the modes of material nature. If someone is in contact with the police department, that does not mean that he is a criminal. As long as one does not commit criminal acts, even though there is a police department, he is not punished. Similarly, the liberated soul is not affected, although he is in the material nature. Even the Supreme Personality of Godhead is supposed to be in association with material nature when he descends, but he is not affected. One has to act in such a way that in spite of being in the material nature, he is not affected by contamination. Although the lotus flower is in association with the water, it does not mix with the water. That is how one has to live, as described here by the Personality of Godhead, Kapiladev. This is sort of going to your, an extended answer to your question. One can be liberated from all adverse circumstances simply by seriously engaging in devotional service. How this devotional service develops and becomes mature is explained here. In the beginning, one has to perform his prescribed duties with a clean mind. Clean consciousness means Krishna consciousness. One has to perform his prescribed duties in Krishna consciousness. There is no necessity of changing one's prescribed duties. One simply has to act in Krishna consciousness. In discharging Krishna conscious duties, one should determine whether, by his professional or occupational duties, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is satisfied. In another place in the Bhagavatam it is said, Swanustistasya dharmasya samsatir haritoshanam. Everyone has some prescribed duties to perform, but the perfection of such duties will be reached only if the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, is satisfied by such actions. For example, Arjuna's prescribed duty was to fight, and the perfection of his fighting was tested by the satisfaction of Krishna. Krishna wanted him to fight, and when he fought for the satisfaction of the Lord, that was the perfection of his professional devotional duty. On the other hand, when, contrary to the wish of Krishna, he was not willing to fight, that was imperfect. If one wants to perfect his life, he should discharge his prescribed duties for the satisfaction of Krishna. One must act in Krishna consciousness, for such action will never produce any reaction. In nimitta nimitena. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Jagnartat kamano nyatra. All activities should be performed simply for yajna, or the satisfaction of Vishnu. Anything done otherwise, without the satisfaction of Vishnu or yajna, produces bondage. So here it is also prescribed by Kapila Muni that one can transcend material engagement by acting in Krishna consciousness, which means seriously engaging in devotional service. This serious devotional service can develop by hearing for long periods of time. Chanting and hearing is the beginning of the process of devotional service. One should associate with devotees and hear from them about the Lord's transcendental appearance, activities, disappearance, instructions, etc., etc. There are two kinds of shruti, or scripture. One is spoken by the Lord, and the other is spoken about the Lord and his devotees. Bhagavad Gita is the former, and Srimad Bhagavatam is the latter. One must hear these scriptures repeatedly from reliable sources in order to become fixed in serious devotional service. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur advised his disciples that they should hear the story of Dhruva Maharaj and of Prahlad Maharaj. They should hear that 100 times. And he also mentioned about the Chaitanya Bhagavat that they should hear hundreds of times over and over again. Even in the text itself, it's mentioned by hearing the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu repeatedly. Here the word is used repeatedly also. That there's an effect that's being described here. Through engagement in such devotional service, one becomes freed from the contamination of Maya. It is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam that hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead cleanses the heart of all contamination caused by the influence of the three modes of material nature. By continuous, regular hearing, the effects of the contamination of lust and greed to enjoy or lord it over material nature diminish. And when lust and greed diminish, one then becomes situated in the mode of goodness. This is the stage of Brahman realization, or spiritual realization. In this way, one becomes fixed on the transcendental platform. Remaining fixed on the transcendental platform is liberation from material entanglement. Do you feel better? Now you know exactly what to do, right? How to become free from this influence of material nature, which has been there since a time immemorial. Right? Feel better? I know I do. Yes. Hari Sankirtan Prabhu.
This the solution given by Kapil Dev is good for people who are sitting in this room, who are ready to listen and hear. But what about people whom we tell to read but they don't read? Although they know they have to, they know that this is a cycle of birth and death, everything. But when we tell them read, like parents, we tell them chant, read, they don't do it. So how do we?
Well, apparently you have to tell them repeatedly. There's a gradation of ways that one can engage in devotional service that Krishna mentions in the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, that one should engage one's mind always in thinking of me, Krishna says. If you can't do that, then perform the rules and regulations of devotional service and you'll rise to that level. And if you can't do that, then do the work that you're doing in the world, but sacrifice the fruit of that work to support the spread of Krishna consciousness. If you can't do that, try to be charitably disposed. And if you can't do that, there are other methods like meditation. But specifically talks about renouncing the fruit of your work. Then you'll gradually come up, to a higher stage. And yes, a serious devotional service, as was mentioned several times here. This is something that may take lifetimes to achieve. Someone who's actually serious about performing devotional service and going back to God, it's a rare person. Bahunam janmanam ante gyanavam mam prapadyate. Vasudeva sarvamiti sa mahatma sudurlabhaha. Not just durlabhaha, but sudurlabhaha. Krishna says, a person who's serious about going back to Godhead, who's taken this process very seriously, is very, very rare. So it's a rare soul. In the meantime, there are ways in which people can be engaged in devotional service, and therefore devotees go out and they spend their time figuring out ways that people can gradually come into the process of Krishna consciousness. They're eager always to do that. Prabhupada tells the story about the brahmachari who's going door to door begging alms for the temple, and he comes to one house where the husband and wife are having a fight with each other and an argument. So when he opens the door, they say, What do you want? And the woman in the house says, give him some ashes and tell him to get out of here. So the husband just says, here's some ashes, now go. And so he takes those ashes and back to the pujari at the temple, and he says, these ashes are very important. Use these to polish the brass for the deities. And that's what he does. And then a few months later, that brahmachari happens to go back to that same neighborhood. Didn't remember which door it was, but he opened the door, and the householders, as soon as they saw him, they fell down and offered their respects and said, please come in. We're such offenders. We're your servants. And then Prabhupada tells the story that because their offering had been engaged, then gradually they became purified. And he said, from a pinch of ashes all the way back to Godhead. That's the vision of Prabhupada. So people can start in so many different ways, and devotees are expert at engaging people. But to come to the serious stage of hearing is a rare thing. Someone who actually has a taste for listening to the holy name. Even one devotee who was living in Vrindavan told me that he was working on a book. And, he's kind of a popular person. People come ask him questions all the time. His room was right there in the Gurukul building. So lots of times people would come and disturb him and spend long amounts of time wanting to talk to him. So he said he found out a way that he could speed up the process. So if people would come and he wanted to get back to his work, he just said he'd pull down a Bhagavatam and said, let's hear a little Bhagavatam. They say, I got to go. I just remembered. So he said not everyone was very serious about hearing. They just wanted a chat. So somebody who seriously wants to hear, that's mentioned here. That's a sign of advancement. So if you can, if you take that instruction and apply it, then by that process of hearing, everything else fructifies within the heart. There's a step-by-step process that happens. By giving by hearing with rapt attention. Rapt comes from the word rapture, which means to really be in trance, to listen. In another place, at the end of the third chapter of the first canto, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada describes how one must drink the sound vibration of the Bhagavatam with one's ears, like a beverage. If you can hear like that, then your progress will be very steady and rapid. Kurinath Prabhu?
I remember we looked up rapt one Saturday morning, and we also heard that it was from rapere, which means to be carried away.
Right.
And so that when you're in rapt attention, you're actually carried away from everything else and into that thing.
Thank you. Yes, Manish.
Like in this purport you mentioned about prescribed duty. I am confused about what is prescribed duty and what is conditional duty. Like here Arjuna, Krishna told fighting, you're fighting, it is a prescribed duty. Similarly when we work, it is also prescribed or is a conditional duty.
Well, if just like Ramananda Sakra Prabhu asked, what kind of work is it that we're doing? You do your work and you connect it to Krishna, and then it's not binding. Yeah. You have to do some work. So find something that you can do, that you can maintain yourself, and then